Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Moonlit Mermaids. I'm going to be sipping on my iced tea, and if you do enjoy this process, I hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, phthalo green, ultramarine blue, deep yellow, fluorescent purple, fluorescent orange, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 10 round synthetic brush and a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch up those if you'd like as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can just print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're doing the base coat for our water. I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using white, green, blue, and black. And how I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to have it lighter at the top and get darker and darker as I go towards the bottom. I'm getting this to be just a really, I would say, kind of like a tropical type of color. You could certainly steer yours more blue or more green, whatever works for you. But I'm going to start with some green and white on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to be using a left to right type of brush stroke to get this on here, kind of like a crisscross type of brush stroke. As I come down my water, I will be using less white. I'm still going to be using a little bit of white as I come down, and I'm going to start to introduce blue as well. So right now I have blue, green, and white on my brush all at the same time, but I am going to be wanting to get my water to go darker and darker as it comes down. So right now, without washing my brush, I just picked up blue and green. So this, without washing my brush, what's going to happen is that white will start to work its way off of my brush, and the illusion of this water will get darker and darker as it's traveling deeper and deeper down into the depths of this. I'm going to call it an ocean floor. You can call yours a sea or an ocean, whatever you'd like to. I guess it could technically be a big, huge lake too. Because mermaids, I think they live in any large body of water. So you can certainly use your imagination there. And then I'm just kind of bringing this down towards the bottom. I think I'm going to kind of, at this point, alternate blue and green instead of using them in conjunction with one another. I'm just going to maybe pick up blue one time, then green another time, so I have different kind of color splotches within the water itself. And right now I'm not picking up any more white. I'm just letting whatever white was left on my brush kind of work its way off. And then as I work my way down towards the bottom, I am going to, in just a minute, start picking up black as well. So the black is going to get this really nice and dark down at the bottom, but because I'm also using the blue and the green on my brush at the same time, so I have green, blue, and black right now, I will get a really dark base down here, but it won't go all the way black on me. I don't want it to necessarily go all the way black because we are going to be doing some black silhouettes of other things down here. So I'm keeping it dark, but maybe not super duper dark. And then if you want to get rid of, so I call these little cut marks in my paint. What I like to do if I'm going to be doing a big area like this, if I don't want to see those, I can just paint my brush left to right as that paint is drying, and it will get rid of a lot of those marks. And or you could do a second coat on your on the background, so that way you can, you know, modify if you want it lighter or darker. As I do this, I'm not pressing hard. I'm really just using almost like a feather kind of touch to it. And then we will be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer on your water here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our water. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I do want to forewarn you though that before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out your blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm in essence going to do is I'm going to put a light coming into the top of the water, my moonlight coming into the top, or implying that there's a moon somewhere up above and shining some light into the water. And I'm also going to put a little glow at the bottom of the ocean floor, indicating that the moon is lighting up, or something's lighting up the bottom of the ocean floor. So the colors I'm going to be using are blue, green, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be using very little bit of paint. I'm going to be putting in a lighter area down at the ocean floor, and then I'll be putting in like streaks or beams of light coming into the water. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to put a tiny bit of green, a tiny bit of blue, and a tiny bit of white all on my brush at the same time. And I like to err on the side of caution when doing something like this, so I'm going to just tap it on my paper towel. I can always add more paint, but it's easier to add more than it is to take away. So I'm going to bring this maybe down maybe about 2 or 3 inches away from the bottom of my canvas, and I'm using a left to right type of brush stroke, so it implies, you know, movement from left to right down at the bottom of the ocean. And I am just looking to add these lighter areas to get it to look like the bottom is kind of glowing a little bit. And you can make as large of an area as you want, or as small of an area. I'm leaving some dark spots so it makes it look a little bit like maybe there's some lumps and bumps of sand or whatever down below. And then I'm going to just kind of fade it off into the distance. So to me, maybe this light area is, you know, we're still seeing the ocean floor, but maybe it just kind of trails off and kind of disappears around some coral or something that we'll be putting in a little bit. And of course you could use more blue or more green or whatever works for you. Just kind of in your head, imagine, you know, this to be the ground of the ocean. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start up at the top to put the moonlight on. So for this process of getting this light beaming through my water, I'm going to have heavy paint up at the top, and then when I go to pull, I'm going to be pulling beams of light into my water. I'm going to be using a little bit of actual water on my brush when I go to pull them down, so that way they become a little bit translucent. So I'm going to start with just white paint on my brush. I'm going to imply that the moon is its brightest over here on the top right hand side of my canvas, and I'm using just a little left to right brush stroke to start to give the indication that maybe that's the top of the water, and these are little ripples that we're just seeing at the very tip top of the water, or movement or bubbles or whatever. Then when I go to do my beams of light, I know that I want them pretty dominant up at the top, so I'm going to use a little bit heavier paint on my brush up here at the top, And then when I go to bring it down into the actual water itself, I'm going to dip my brush in water like this, dab it on my paper towel, and pick up a tiny bit of blue and green. So I have white, water, blue, and green on my brush right now. And I'm going to start to pull these streaks down into the ocean floor. So my light source is somewhere here or up above. So they'll all be coming down in that direction. So think of it like they're coming from a main source and they're splaying out and dissipating and getting farther and farther away or spread out farther as they come out into the ocean. And you can certainly make these as bright as you want. I'm getting some of them to come all the way down. I'm trying not to be super systematic with it, so some of them are going to be wider than others. Maybe I pick up a little bit more blue so we can have some different color variations throughout this, but you can certainly make yours as bright or as dark as you want. With having the actual water on your brush, your paint will tend to look lighter when it's wet. So just know that it will dry a little bit darker. So I would, before you cast judgment on whether or not you want to, whether or not you're done, what I would say is let it dry for a couple of minutes. And then if you feel like you want to do any more intensity on those beams of light, go ahead and do so, because again, they're going to dry a little bit darker, and sometimes you want to add, come back and add that bit of brightness before you go on to the next step. And we will be using we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and done, you can put this big brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our seashell and our seaweed. So I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to use just black paint for this. So I'm going to put my seashell in place first. I'm going to have mine kind of in this left-hand corner over in through here. I'm going to come up, I would say maybe about a third of the way up my canvas, somewhere in this vicinity. And I'm going to give myself the exterior of so the shell is going to be like this, and the open part is going to be down here. So I'm going to give myself the exterior shape of it somewhere in through here. It's going to look like this, and then just kind of come over and maybe come down somewhere in through here. And you might not see it much in the dark area just because your paint might be all the way black down there. And then I'm just going to ripple my edges. So I'm just going to use my paintbrush and just kind of ripple the edges along the side of it, something like that. I'm going to color that section in with black paint. We'll be adding some highlight colors to it in a little while. And you don't have to worry about coloring it in 100% because maybe it's got some of those oceanic colors glowing off of it as well. So just get it, as much as you want to. We'll be putting some fun orange color on it in a little while. And then I'm going to put the bottom portion of it somewhere. I'm going to come up the side of it, maybe just a couple of inches, and then I'm just going to bring it out in this semicircle type of a shape in through here. And then again, I'll bump out the edges so they have a little bit of wave to them. And then when I go to color in this part, I don't, again, necessarily have to go all the way to the edge of where I made this ripple, because this is going to be like the inside of the shell, and it's going to have some additional colors in it anyways. We're really just looking for that profile right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this same brush with black paint to make almost like silhouettes of seaweed. So I'm really just going to make a whole bunch of squiggly lines going in an upward type of direction wherever I want to. So I'm going to do a couple over here on the left hand side. I'll do maybe a little cluster down at the bottom of my canvas, maybe coming up in, a little bit taller than my seashell a bit. Maybe, I don't think I want too much coming out over here, but maybe we've got a little kind of cluster in through there. So wherever you want there to look like there's some type of vegetation, coming out of the ocean floor, that's where I would put it. I'm going to be putting a whole bunch over here on the right hand side, and I'm really just making a bunch of wiggly, squiggly marks coming out the side, coming down, or coming up from the bottom, and make it as full of life as you want, or as, you know, subtle as you want. They can come to the, you know, bend over. You can really have a whole bunch of fun making seaweed. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your seaweed and your seashell in place, you can put this medium brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for our mermaids. And I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint. But for the ease of showing this to you, I do have mine pre-drawn, but I'm going to teach you how to draw them as well. So I'm going to be using my small brush and black paint, but you could certainly use a pencil or chalk or whatever is your most comfortable drawing tool. I'm going to be using black paint because that's the color I'm going to be using for the base coat of them. But again, you could certainly use anything that you'd like. So I'm going to be using my small brush, black paint, and I am going to water it down a little bit. So that way I have a nice fluid brush stroke when I go to create these. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating, in essence, kind of a center line that's going to give me the motion or the direction of each body, and then we'll build the body around those lines. So think of that center line as connecting the head to the back fin, and it's going to be bent in whatever way you want that body to be bent. So this one, I want her to be kind of swimming and looking up at that light source, so I've got it bent in this direction. This one, I've got her kind of in an upward, just almost like standing kind of position, and then her fin is curved a little bit in through here. And then this one is kind of floating down by the bottom of the ocean floor, so we're seeing kind of like her back and her spine. So that's how I've got that going. So I'm going to do that center line first. My first one I've got over here. I'll give you little pointers as to where the top and the bottom of these lines are. So this one is maybe about 2 or 3 inches from the top and maybe about 4 inches from the side. So I'll give myself a little bit of a marker in through there. And then this one in through here, this is about center of my canvas, left to right. And if this is about center up and down, I'm maybe about 2 inches above that. And then I'm going to connect these with a curved line, but I'm going to have it bump out in this direction a little bit before I bring it around this corner like this. And I'm going to go ahead and meet it to my other marker. And I'm going to do this for all 3 of them, so we go through the same process in a similar order for all 3 of our mermaids. So this one, I've got the top of my marker right in through here. So this again is maybe about 3.5 inches from the edge from the left edge, and I've got it a little bit lower than this one. So if you come down maybe about a half of an inch to an inch from this one, that's about the height of this in through here. And then the tail, I've got right about here. So I'm dropping from here, maybe about 3 inches, and then I'm about halfway between there and the edge of my canvas. So maybe about 1/4 of a way. It's a little bit to the right of that head in through there. And then I'm gonna just connect those two. So you can have a firm line or a skinny line to connect these. It doesn't really matter because this is gonna be the interior of the body. Then I'm going to do this third one down in through here. So I have the head, this is about 1/4 of the way up my canvas, and it's a little bit to the right of the center. So wherever you have this one, it's going to be a little bit to the right of that, somewhere in through here. And then the tail is over from here, maybe about 3 to 4 inches and up about 1 inch, something like that. And when I go to connect these two, I'm going to bring it out to the right a little bit in through here and then back up. So you want to make sure when you come down on this one that you're coming down well past here. So maybe about 2 inches, 2 to 3 inches below the head. So that way that'll give you a good arch or arc in the back. So something like that. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back up to that top one, and we're just going to build our body. So I'm going to start at my head, and I'm going to start each head with just a circle. So I've got this in like this, so something like this, or circle, ovalish kind of marker somewhere in like that. And then I build my face in the direction that I want it to be facing. So I want this one to go up, so I'm going to add a little bit of a bump for a nose and a little bit of a bump for a chin. You certainly could add a mouth as well, but I'm not adding much detail into this, so I'm just going for a nose and a chin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, for this particular one, because I know she's going to have a ton of hair, I'm just going to connect the outside of this circle down in through here. This is going to be the arch of her back. I'm going to put a bump for her rear end somewhere in through here. So about midway down this arch, I'm going to give a bump for her rear end. And of course you can color this in as you go along, just so you have, it colored in, I guess. And then I'm just going to kind of get this to come down and get right into that tail portion that we have already designated as where it's going to start to flip her out into the fin part. So over here, I need a chest, a belly, and a knee, because we're looking at the profile for her. So I have, this is her neck. I'm coming kind of straight down. I'm going to bump it out for her chest in through here. The belly is really just kind of a belly because of her arched back, because she has an arched back. So I kind of bumped that out a little bit to tell the story of her arched back. And then I'm just going to kind of ride this down like this. And then where this curves in through here, I'm going to give her, well, I don't know if it's technically a knee, but it'll give the implication of a real body part underneath that magical fin of hers. And then I'm just going to kind of connect these two in through here. I'm going to give her her flipper or her fin along the end like this. And these can be really long and flowy. Think of them like, like there's these butterfly fish that have these beautiful, long, flowing kind of fins. And so that's kind of when I'm thinking of a mermaid. I always think that they've got lots of movement to them and they're flowy. I need to give her an arm. So her arm is going to come out where her shoulder is. So the shoulder is going to be above the chest and to the left. And so I'm just going to kind of give it a little width as it's coming out her body in through here. I'll make it a little bit more narrow where I feel that elbow would be. And then I'm going to make it a touch wider where her forearm is. So I just push my brush a little bit firmer for that forearm. And then her hand, I'm just going to give her some curved little fingers like that, and maybe a curved little thumb like that. And that's all I'm going to do. Oh, she's going to need some hair, but we're going to do the hair at once on all three of them. So I'm going to go move to my next one, which is over here on the left. I'm going to start with my circle for my head, something like this. Once I've got my circle for my head, I'm going to give her a little neck in through here. Then I'm going to give her a shape to her face. So she's going to be looking over at the light source or where the moon is shining through the water. So I'm just going to bump her out a little tiny nose about halfway down the face, and then maybe give her a little bit of a chin. Nothing major, just something to imply that she's got a little bit of shape to her. And again, if you wanted to give her a mouth, you certainly could, but I'm going to skip the mouth. So I'm going to give her her body. So I've got her shoulders kind of in through here. Whenever I see or think of like a woman's shape, when you're looking at it from the front, I always think of like an hourglass or like a figure eight. So you could kind of do a figure eight like this. This is just one of those rudimentary kind of ways that I always think, when I'm looking just that generic kind of shape for a woman, I kind of do a figure eight. Then I can bump out her waist however I want that to be. And then of course I will finish her fin or her flipper. So this one I have, of course, looking more dead on to us as opposed to the other one that was kind of swimming at an angle. And then I'll bring this all the way down to where I had the bottom of that line. I'll give her her flipper on the end, and of course your flipper can certainly take on a much different shape than mine, but I've got mine just kind of thicker at the top and then just flowing down into like a little curved point at the bottom of it. And then I've got to give her some arms. So for the arms, I'm going to widen up those shoulders a little bit, something like this, and the arms come down in a downward motion. I've got this one here, and again a little bit wider until I get to the forearm or the elbow. Then I make it a little bit skinnier, or skinny at the elbow, a little bit wider at the forearm, and then when it comes to that hand, I'm just going to give her a little bit of a curved area to indicate her fingers, and then maybe a little thumb area in through there. And then on this one, I've got her shoulder coming out over here. She's got her little bicep. She's got the under part of her arm. I've got this one a little bit wider. Not sure if it's exactly the right width, but that's okay. She's a mermaid. She doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm going to go ahead and do the forearm, so a little bit more narrow at the wrist, bringing it down towards that elbow. And then I will give her her hand, so she's kind of got it cupped. And I don't know, maybe she's going to be catching the beautiful rays from the moon and capturing them and putting them safely away somewhere for some magic. And then I'm just going to give her her little hand, a little thumb in through there. And then I'll put her hair on in a minute. I'm going to go down to this bottom one, give her her circle for her head, somewhere in through here. So I'm going to start that head with my circle, and then I will add my facial features to indicate the chin. And it looks like I might have bumped out a little part of a mouth on this one. Not quite sure why, but it must have just happened while I was doing. Oops, I just dropped my brush. Hold on one second. Let me pick that back up. So a little bump out for my nose. Just making sure my brush is visible. So a little bump out for her nose and a little bump out for her chin. And then just bring that back. Make sure her neck is wide enough that it looks like it would work with her. I've got her shoulders in through here. And then hers is a little, she's got a little bit of strange of an angle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tackle this right side first. So I've got her shoulder. This comes down to her waist. And then she has a butt right in through here. So I've got her butt going on in through there. I'm going to bring this left side just down so I can kind of visually see where her stomach or her torso is going to be. So I just bring this down along in through here. This just helps me to plan out where those arms are going to go. I've got this kind of coming up because she's just, you know, maybe floating down at the bottom. Who knows what she's discovered down there that she's checking out and holding in her hands, but maybe it's a seashell or some kind of fun sea creature or something. And then I'm just bringing this down on the other side. If you want to give it a little bit more body to it, of course you can bring that belly down just a little bit, and then you can bring what would be like the knee area somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to do the arms. So I want this to look like she's kind of holding something. So I'm going to do the one that's closest to us first. So something, bring this down to my elbow area, and then just bring it back up to where that wrist is. You might find that when you do this that you might not even see or need part of the other arm, but I'm going to give the idea that there's another arm in there. First I'm going to give a little thumb like this, and then just give the little hand up in through there like she's holding something. I'm bringing this all the way to my marker that I had. Now I'm going to give her her other elbow. So I'm just going to bring this right down at about the same level as the first one, and then going to give some kind of implication that the other forearm is over here somewhere. And then I'm going to do her little flipper or fin or whatever you want to refer to this as. And then we got to just put their hair on. So the hair I'm going to do again with just my black paint. I am going to be using my watered down black paint so I can have some nice fluid brush strokes. I'm not going to go too wild and crazy. I do want them to look like they have long hair, but you don't want it to take up the whole thing. So for this one here, I'm going to have her hair coming down in to me what would be a natural fluid way, kind of coming down and out. You could certainly strategically hide part of your arm if it didn't work out quite as you had envisioned or hoped it would, but I'm just going to kind of give myself some real kind of long and flowing pieces of hair coming out here. And of course, it's a mermaid. I don't think they get their hair cut very often, so your hair can be as long as you'd like it to be. This one over here, I'm going to have hers kind of come in at a similar angle, but maybe more a little bit out to this, I don't know, just somewhere in this direction is where this one's going. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can really have this hair going in whatever direction you want. It can be going up like the one that we've got down at the bottom. I'm going to have her hair going actually in an upward motion. So that's going to be fun. Maybe this has a couple of pieces kind of coming out a little bit further. And of course you can tweak yours. We're going to put color on the hair in a little bit too. So that'll be a fun stage to kind of modify this into whatever way you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this one here. This one I'm actually going to have kind of coming in an upward motion. So maybe she's just kind of resting down at the bottom of the ocean and she's got her pieces of hair are just kind of floating up towards the top of the ocean. And then we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your beautiful silhouettes of your mermaids on here, you can put this small brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your, sorry, I'm getting distracted by mermaid hair. You can take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our ocean floor. So this is going to encompass our seashell, our seaweed, and any coral or other kind of fun life that you would like to put down at the bottom. I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using orange, yellow, and white. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put my orange on my seashell, my orange on my coral, and then I'll put little highlights on those, and then we'll finish the seaweed portion of it as well. So I'm going to take my medium brush. I'm putting just orange paint on my brush right now. I'm going to, in essence, kind of give myself this outside area of the seashell. So the seashell to me is going to be kind of popping out like this, and this is going to be the edge of the bottom portion of it. So what I'm going to do is I've got my orange on my brush. I'm going to kind of dot on these little humps so I can kind of see where they are along the edges of my seashell. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them, and with my brush I'm going to just kind of bring them back in this carefree kind of curved manner. I know that this orange paint will get darker as it dries. So this, to me, is just my first kind of go around with this. I will add a little bit of a highlight in a minute, but this kind of just gets me going. So I'm going to do the same thing on my little shell down here. Going to kind of give myself these little almost dots along that rippled edge that we had created. I want this, let me bring this up here so you can see it a little bit more. I want the edge of this to come up just a little bit above the edge of my canvas. So I'm just going to kind of do something like that just to give it the implication that this is the exterior edge of it. So just going to bring little bits coming down in through there. And then on the inside, this is the inside of the shell, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just kind of bring this little hint of this orange down in through here so it fades into this darkness. And again, we'll put the more highlights on the edge in a minute, but I just kind of want to get that started. I'm going to do the same thing with my coral. So I'm going to put orange paint on my brush. So my coral is really just the impression of coral. I'm not going in for any real detail here. I'm just going to give myself these little squiggly clusters of these bright orange masses. So I'm going to put a couple up in through here. So I'm really just using thick orange paint and just kind of dabbing it here and there. This is just going to give me the impression of these little pieces of coral that have grown throughout the ocean floor. Think of it like, I know that coral is like a kind of a rock formation, but in my head I'm seeing flowers. So these are my representation of coral type flowers at the bottom of the ocean. We're going to put highlights on them in a minute, and I do know that this orange, as it dries, is going to give some light spots and some dark spots, so depending on its thickness or thinness. So I'm really just kind of having fun, letting my brush kind of dictate what it wants to do, just wiggling it about. I'm not holding my brush really tight, so this is allowing me to get these really carefree, bumpy looking type of formations. And then once I get as many on there as I want, you could certainly bring some up a little bit higher. Just kind of try and get a good balance with, you know, the quantity that you put. If you do it nice and uneven and not try to be systematic, then it'll look a little bit more natural. Now that I've got the formation, now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm picking up a touch of white paint, and this is where I'm going to give myself some little highlights along the edge of my shell. I'm not going all the way around it. I'm just kind of concentrating on the area that is towards the light. And then what I'm going to do is I'm dabbing my brush off on my paper towel to make sure I don't have too much on there. And then I'm just going to kind of pull these back in that kind of curved direction to imply the shape of that seashell. And then you can certainly make this brighter or darker if you wanted to, but this gives me those, you know, little lumps on the sides of the seashell. I'm going to make it kind of a little bit more evident down here so you can see the edge of it. I'm going to do the same thing on the edge over here. I put orange and white on my brush so I can give a little bit more brightness along the edge of the shell over in through here, and then maybe just a touch, make sure you can see this here, just a touch of it in through here. So you can certainly do, you know, more detail than mine or less detail than mine, whatever is working visually for you, but I'm just giving the idea that this is the inside, this is the edge of it, and then this is the outside of it. And then I'm going to pick up white and orange and give myself little highlights throughout my coral. So this will give you the textured look. I'm really consciously not over blending, so I'm really just making these heavy spots with a little bit of white and a little bit of orange on my brush. I'm trying not to make it too consistent looking. I'm trying to keep some of these lighter areas up at the top of the formations. And to me, again, coral is just really lots of texture to it, little bumpy rocks that some connect, some don't. So that's all I'm really looking to do, is give it some sort of textural type of effect. And I love the bright orange, so that's where I always kind of think of bright orange or bright yellow when I'm thinking of coral or white. So that's the color I've chosen to use. Of course, you could use a different color. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to finish my seaweed. So my seaweed is going to be predominantly yellow, but I'll also use a little bit of white, and if I want to, a little bit of black as well. But I'm going to start similarly to how I did the coral, with just using the white on my brush. And I'm kind of following along where I had the original kind of black squiggle marks that I made. I'm thinking of the seaweed as more long squiggles as opposed to the coral, which was more bumpy and shorter dot type of marks. For me, the coral is going, or the seaweed is going to be like long wiggly pieces of grass, and you can put it in between your pieces of coral. And of course this too will dry darker than it is when it's wet. So I'm really just trying to give myself a good assortment of this seaweed, long squiggly type of marks. Right now I'm really just using my yellow and putting it in similar areas to where I had that where I did the seaweed originally, those black, when we did the original black profile or silhouette of it. But once you've got it on there, if you want to amp it up any, you can put a little bit of white and yellow on your brush, and then just give yourself a couple of extra bright pieces coming out here and there. So again, just kind of keeping it inconsistent will make it look a little bit more natural. If you have it really systematic and every piece looks exactly the same, it might look a little bit less natural. But that's, you know, going to be a judgment call on your part as to how intense you want this to be, or how you know, how organized you want it to be. But for me, I'm definitely into the wild side of natural elements, so I like mine to look a little inconsistent. And then I'm going to be switching back to my small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your seashell and the rest of the stuff on the bottom of your ocean floor done, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to finish our mermaids. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm using are blue, green, white, purple, yellow, and orange. So I'm using all my colors except for black, but I actually might use black if I need to. So I'm going to call them out as I use them. So really, in my head, I'm seeing these mermaids in a silhouetted type of way. So I'm not looking to put a ton of detail, but I do want to give them some sort of three-dimensional element to them. So I'm going to be adding highlights, in essence, to show their shape and their form and stuff. So for me, I'm actually going to be adding highlights from two different places. From two different light sources. One is going to be the light source coming from the moon, and the other is going to be a light source coming from the ocean floor. So I'm going to have highlights on the bottom of my mermaids as well as on the top, or the sides that are closest to the light source. So my highlights on the bottom, I'm going to be using my ocean floor glow color, which is green, blue, and white. And the highlights from up here, I'm going to be using purple on the bodies, and then on the hair, I'll be using hair color, which we'll talk about in a minute. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start from the bottom and just kind of work my way up. So I'm going to be using white, green, and blue on my brush at the same time. I don't need much, so you can even just kind of tap it on your paper towel. Really what I'm doing is just, I want to give the viewer the information that this little mermaid is being lit up, or the bottom of her is being lit up by that ocean floor. So it's going to give you that sense of dimension throughout, and give you, you know, almost the appearance of a light source, and tell you the shape of her while we're at it. So I'm going to do a little bit on her hand and through here, maybe a little bit under her arm here. And if you can't see it, you might need to add a bit more white, or, you know, adjust it just a little bit so you can actually see it, because there's no sense in putting it there if you can't see it. And you can certainly reshape her body as much as you want to throughout that process. And I'm going to go, maybe a little bit on her face too. I'm going to give her a little bit on her chin, and I just need a little bit more white paint on my brush, maybe a little bit on the underside of her nose to indicate that she's, you know, being, whatever she's looking at or anything down there is glowing her face, maybe a little bit on her cheek as well. Less is more on this kind of step. You really don't need much. And if you get to a point you're like, oh my God, I put too much glow on there, you can always pick up a tiny bit of black. Like I just picked up a little bit of black just to dull that down a little bit. But again, you don't really need much at all. So then I'm going to go ahead and maybe a little bit more white in through here, in through her hand. I can't really see her hand as much as I want to, so a touch more white in through there. So then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other two mermaids. So white, green, and blue are on my brush. The things closest to the ocean floor to me are the little tips to her fins in through here. So just adding little streaks of that light color into the bottom of her fins, maybe down at the bottom of the body in through here. And again, I'm not seeing that as much as I want to, so I just picked up a bit more white to elevate that highlight just a bit more. Maybe a little bit on her hands, because this is, to me, is the underside where it would kind of be facing the ocean floor, maybe underneath her arm in through here. So this will give you, again, that glow from below. So something like that on here, maybe a little bit on her hand in through here. And again, if you can't see it because the contrast isn't as much as you need, just add a touch more white to it. So something like that. Maybe a little bit on her underbelly side here. Something like that. I'm thinking that's pretty good. Of course, I can't highlight. I like my highlights. It's tough for me to stop. So I'm going to stop on that one, and then I'm going to wash my brush, and I'm going to put a little bit of purple. So purple is going to be my highlights on the bodies, and the highlights are going to come from up top. My purple, I'm going to use just the purple at first, and then I'll add a little bit of white to it to give it like a gradient. So we'll start at the one that's closest to the light source. So I want a little bit of highlight on her face. My purple is going, I just made her nose grow a little bit. My purple is going to act as a really kind of a subtle color, especially on top of this black. I think I actually need a little bit more so you guys can see it. And again, I know it's going to dry darker than it is when it's wet, so I'm utilizing that thought process to get it to kind of just blend into some of that body. And once I've got as much as I kind of want, or have kind of designated where I want those highlighted spots, like I want one on her butt, I want one over in through this direction, maybe I want a couple going in her fin in through here. Once I know where I want those highlights to go, I've designated that by putting the purple there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a touch of white paint and elevate like just the edges like I did to the underside. So teeny tiny bit of white paint. Maybe I give her a little bit of a glow on top of her face as it is nearing the exit of the water. And again, if you feel like you've gone too much, you can certainly just add a bit of black, but I'm just kind of rubbing this in. So we've got a little forehead, a little nose. I just put a little bit more purple on my brush just to kind of get this, give her a little cheek in through there, her forehead. And again, I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot, especially because I want to keep this to be very, you know, fantasy-esque, but I know I want a little bit more in through this chest region. And of course you can reshape this to be whatever way that you would like. I've got a paper towel in my hand, which is helping me to control the quantity of paint on my brush. So I don't want too much paint, so I can't control it. So every time I go to add paint, if I feel like I have too much paint on my brush, I just wipe it off on my paper towel. And I just keep adding these little highlights, especially as the paint is drying. I know that it's going to get darker and darker, but I'm really just looking for that highlight towards the edge. I think I want a little more white just right here on the tippy edge of it like that. Maybe a little bit more lightness in through here with my white and my purple. And I'm just going to kind of keep adding to the brightness of this purple with the white. So I don't want it to really take over and make the viewer feel like they're looking at too much detail. I really just want this to be pretty darn subtle. So that's why I'm really just kind of taking my time and progressively getting it to go brighter and brighter without overdoing it, just making sure that I've got that highlight on her butt to show the shape. Of course, you can use your fingers to paint too. I just realized I was using my fingers. Sorry about that, didn't mean to. But so that's I've highlighted her areas that pop out the most. So her chest, her bum, her face, and these areas that are closest to the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and tackle the next one over here. So giving a little bit of the purple highlight where I'm going to want it the most, which is right on the face, on the top of this arm, in through here, maybe a little bit on her hand, definitely some down this right hand side. So I've got a good amount of purple on right now, getting a good amount on her right side, because to me that is where it is closest to the light source, and getting it to just blend out into the dark area on the left hand side of her. Adding more purple to my brush right now to get this area in through here, get a little bit on this fin in through here. And because this is you know, a real free-flowing kind of painting, and it doesn't necessarily it's kind of mystical and magical. It doesn't have to follow any rules. You get to kind of make up the rules as you go along. I just put purple with a little bit of white on my brush. The purple and the white really become super bright when you combine them together on top of this black. So just, you know, go slow, be mindful of where you want those highlights, and less is more. You can always add more throughout the process. It's easier to add than it is to take away. I'm putting a little bit of white on the front of her face, and that can definitely, these little highlights can help to reshape an area. If you did something and you're like, that wasn't exactly as I had planned, you can certainly use those highlights to reshape. I'm just kind of adding this little volume to her bum over in through here, and then I think I'm just going to put a little bit more in her tail. And then we'll move on to the one down at the bottom of the water. So again, this purple without the white in it will dry really dark on top of the black. So I'm just continuing, as the purple is drying, I'm just continuing to elevate it to whatever brightness I want. So if I want these to be really, really evident, I can certainly add as much white paint to it as I want. If I want it to be really subtle, then you don't. You know, you just keep it dark. Now I'm going to go move down to her in through here. So to me, her highlight is going to be on the back of her shoulders in through here. So that's where I'm adding my purple, getting it to fade down into the crook of her back. Her bum is going to get some highlight in through here, so adding quite a bit of purple in through there. And then I'm going to have part of her fin is going to have quite a bit of highlight as well. So this is going to just paint in some purple up along in through here. And then of course I've got some good highlights on the tips of her fins in through here. Maybe a little bit on the back of her arm, just so we can really see that she's got some form in through there, maybe a touch on her neck. And then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white with my purple to give myself that extra bit of highlight, maybe on this right hand side where it's closest to the light source up above, which is that moon shining through the beautiful ocean top. And then just kind of getting this to fade out into the darker areas. And then I just need to do the hair. So the hair, I'm gonna put, again, very subtle markings for the hair so it doesn't overdo it. I think I'm gonna start with this one right here. So I'm gonna just wipe or wash and dry my brush. I'm gonna use a touch of yellow, and I think just yellow is where I'm gonna go with this one in through here. I'm just gonna give some subtle little highlights. Less is more, not adding a lot at all. And I'm going to go in for some black too. So I like to, when I'm doing hair such as this, to overlap the lighter pieces with the darker pieces. So when I get to the highlight part, as I'm at right now, I think I'm using a touch of white too for a couple of brighter ones up at the top. When I get to a step like this where I'm finalizing it and I want to make sure that it kind of looks as dimensional as I want, I will overlap some dark pieces on top of the light pieces, so that way it looks like maybe there's a piece that's shadowing another piece. So you can really have fun with it. And again, I'm trying not to overdo it, and I'm putting it in the direction that I feel it would be coming off of her head. So just maybe a little bit in through here. And then I think my other mermaid, the one towards the top, I'm going to be using a little bit of orange for her hair. So I'm going to go up here, wash and dry my brush, pull out some orange on my brush, and I'm going to just do some subtle orange streaks throughout her hair. And then again, once I've got those on there, maybe I pick a little bit of white paint to give myself some extra little highlights up at the top. So I didn't wash my brush, I just picked up white with a little bit of that orange, and then maybe a little bit of black to again overlap those colors. And you can of course have as much fun with this as you want. I think I want a little bit, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I don't want her to end up with gray hair, hold on. So I'm going to go orange with a little bit of white. I think I want a couple of additional lighter pieces up on this top side. So trying not to overdo it, just kind of giving myself a little bit of maybe some in through here as well. I like painting hair. It's hard to stop though. So I'm thinking that's pretty good. I might tweak it a little bit more, but that's looking good for me for now. And then this one I think I'm going to just go with maybe combination of the both. So yellow, orange, and a little bit of white. It'll be the color for this one. So I'm just making them slightly different from one another. You could certainly do them all the same. You could certainly use, you know, a color reference from your own hair. You could, you know, or your sister's hair or your aunt's hair or whatever you want. It's your mermaids. You can really make them into whatever you want. I feel like I have too much paint on my brush, so I just kind of wiped it off, making this hair just kind of flow down her back and in through the water, and just giving her a couple little highlights here and there. And then we have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with your small brush. So once you've got all of your beautiful mermaids all nice and finished, you can, a couple more pieces coming out here, you can wash and dry this tiny brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm actually going to sign mine right in this little spot here. I'm going to use my small brush. I'm using black paint. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol. I'm putting mine right here so it looks like a little piece of seaweed. nice and hidden kind of in here, but you could make yours as, you know, bold as you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful mermaid painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.